Hi, you're watching TechCrunch TV. I'm Colleen Taylor, Backstage at Disrupt San Francisco 2012. Sitting with me is Harj, one of the partners at Y Combinator, just fresh off stage.
Yep.
You were in a panel. How did it go out there?
I think it went pretty well. BetaWorks is interesting. It's like, I actually understand better now exactly what they do than I did before, but it's clearly very different to what Y Combinator does. So it's cool that there's lots of stuff going on in there.
Exactly. I want to ask about how this latest batch of Y Combinator startups, I was there at Demo Day.
Yep.
What a big day. I mean, how many companies?
84.
84.
Yeah. Yeah, by quite a distance, the largest batch that we've had so far. Though also still the most selective batch we've ever had. The acceptance rate still remains remarkably consistent. We just had a huge surge in applications for the previous batch.
Have you internally sort of made a decision yet? Is your next round going to be at a similar size or even bigger? What do you think about?
We never do that in advance. It usually is a function of the applications that come in. So we never quite know. We haven't. There's definitely, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We think. We just don't know. It's like, I'm trying to think, like we just can't predict in advance.
How was this latest batch different? How were these past few months? Was it kind of overwhelming in a way? I mean...
It was definitely, yes, there were definitely a lot of companies. But yeah, there were like what happens is at the end of each round, we get feedback from founders on things that worked and things that didn't work, and then we act on those for the next batch. And there wasn't anything that was completely broken. Like no one said like this batch was totally broken, but there were things that were like, as there are on every round, like things that we're going to think about and try and address for the next batch of companies.
And one thing you mentioned on stage is that Y Combinator's kind of purpose is to get them to the phase where they are able to get some investment.
Yep.
That it's about pushing them to that next phase where they can really take on some investment and take off.
Yep.
And I talked to Paul Graham a bit at Demo Day, and we wrote an article for TechCrunch about how there was no funding slide during this batch of presentations because they really wanted the funding process to kick off at Demo Day, whereas in previous years it hasn't. Can you talk about how is that? Did it actually kick off at Demo Day? How's the funding process?
Pretty much.
been?
I mean, so what happens is as YC's brand grows and there's more and more sort of fierce competition to get into the Y Combinator companies, investors start approaching the companies earlier and earlier in the process, which we don't explicit. We would like the companies to focus on like product and sales for the 3 months so they can get up and give a really great Demo Day presentation, not get distracted. Because the worst case scenario is you start talking to investors a couple of weeks into YC, you don't close any funding, and you've also been derailed from any product momentum. So you get up on Demo Day and you like neither have any funding nor have any interesting traction to show or anything proved out. So that's the scenario we're trying to avoid. And clearly there was a bit of an incentive if there was like a fundraising slide on every Demo Day presentation. Companies that hadn't raised funding seemed like they were inadequate or less further along than ones that had already. So that was the main driver was let's not talk about the fundraising during the Demo Day presentation. It means you don't lose out on your sort of appearance if you stuck to not raising funding earlier on during the process. So that was like the thinking behind that.
And there was a lot of talk about revenue instead of funding so far. I found that a lot of startups talked about how much money they'd already made, and a surprising amount of them were already profitable at Demo Day.
Yeah, which is great. We push companies. I mean, it depends on what they're working on, obviously, but there seems to be a trend of we're funding more and more. We're seeing more companies that are sort of revenue-making companies in the sense that they have some service that they want to sell and typically want to sell to other businesses. And YC is a great place to come and do that because you can bootstrap your initial revenue from just your other YC batchmates and then your other YC alum. But yeah, like for the right kind of business, we push them. And like investors, especially, I mean, Paul's letter about the sort of Facebook IPO potentially affecting investor climate, that going out. Obviously, we don't expect the current fundraising environment to last indefinitely. And so it's both better, investors are more comfortable investing in things where they can see like revenue and there's a clear path to making money. And also it's just the right decision for the companies. Like if you can build revenue and not be reliant upon raising any more funding, why wouldn't you?
Now, is there a feeling, you mentioned alums, and you're a Y Combinator alum yourself, was it 2009?
2007.
2007, geez,
Yeah.
that is odd number
Another
years.
lifetime.
Yeah, is there a feeling from you or even people from those early classes? You know, in university, I remember I'd talk to older alums of the university and they'd say, well, I'd never be able to get in these days.
Yeah,
you know?
people say that. People say
Do you
that
feel
a
that
lot.
way about Y Combinator? Like
People-
these days, I'd never... Like if it was as strict then as it is now?
Actually, no. Right. So no, we don't. People do say that, but we don't. So on one side, people say that because they see a company present on demo day that's doing like X thousands of revenue, and they think, wow, like you need to have like lots of revenue in order to get into Y Combinator now. But at the flip side, we also had a company present, which is it was like a couple of 19-year-olds that dropped out of Berkeley, and they still haven't quite figured out exactly what they're working on. But the guys are really, really smart. Like I'm pretty confident they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So we still fund people who. It's not that we've gotten stricter, it's just we're accepting a broader, like there's more people applying to YC now. Like
Right.
companies that were doing revenue never even thought to apply to Y Combinator, so they see them. But we like actively, we really hope it's not true that you can't get in. We really hope it's not true that you're like Drew Houston and you're applying now with like no product as yet or a co-founder and we filter you out. That would be bad.
Yeah.
Airbnb is similar. Like the guys like tried to raise money from everyone in the valley from like they were going at it for a year and a half before coming into YC, and we let them in because we really like the guys, and so we don't like. It would be bad for YC if we ever only funded companies that seem like they were like further along or something
Right.
like that.
And last question. I swear I'm never going to be talking about this Google Ventures Y Combinator thing again.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you guys are sick of hearing about it, but I have to ask. Internally, just the fact that there was a memo leak, I mean, Y Combinator has been known for keeping their stuff pretty tight.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that kind of felt, what the internal discussion was like. Are there any kind of like crackdown policies to prevent that from happening in the future, or can you?
It was unfortunate. We'd obviously prefer it hadn't happened.
Did you find out who did it?
No, not as yet.
Yeah.
There's not like, it's not like we're not implementing any intense crackdown policy. We're still trying to decide what the right way forward is. And it's unclear exactly why it happened. But if we knew why it happened, it would be easier to formulate a thesis as to what we should do. But yeah, it was unfortunate.
I guess you just got to move forward or something.
Yeah, we're just gonna move forward. It could just be. I mean, I think what is the saying? Like, never attribute to malice that which can be attributed to like mistake or something along that.
I like that.
So
yeah.
we just think it was probably just a case of not the greatest judgment, and like I think the consequences of it have been made pretty clear in terms of like what it would mean for other. Like, we need to we want to be able to communicate openly with the Y Combinator startups. So I don't think we need to implement some radical overhaul of everything.
Right. Well, Harj, thank you for coming backstage and joining
Thanks.
us on stage, and always great to talk to you.
You too. Thanks.